giants, of course, being very tall people of the modern world, relates to the Dutch because we are leading, we are being the tallest nation since the last 30 or 40 years. I think now women are being surpassed by women from Latvia, but the men are still the tallest. So this is a question that I wanted to ask. Why did we become the tallest people in the world? Because it is not so self-evident. So early 19th century we were actually at a very low level. We were certainly not among the tallest in Europe, one of the shortest actually. So it's not just a question of race or genes, it is a question of socioeconomic conditions that have improved strongly, and so the question is how can we understand this development? And of course the idea is that it's not just about the Netherlands, it's about a universal development, universal process that we hope to understand by this project. We can do this because we have a very large database of life courses. So we have already been working more than 25 years reconstructing 80,000 persons, complete life histories of these persons who were born from 1812 to 1922. And for persons born after 1850, we know the household situation from day to day. So this is very unique. There is almost no other country in the world where this is possible. And then we are connecting these life courses, life histories to military examination. So we have conscript army since then, which means that basically every boy from 19 years old was examined. And this of course makes it different from many other sources on height. Because in many countries you only have prisons or volunteer armies or students or passports, all in some way there are biases. And of course if you have a conscript army then the biases are limited. Of course we only have men, so this is of course the problem. We would like to have women as well, but they were not enlisted. So my study, we started this study last year. I did some preliminary research, I will talk about it in my talk, on some small villages, on small places. But now we are beginning with this research covering the whole of the country, covering a very long period, so starting 1812. And we actually are hoping to continue until 1980 or 1990. Depends on the permission that I need to have from the military archives. But at least we can follow people from this period until 1940. So we can cover a whole long period of rising height, so a secular trend increase. And what we want to do is simply study all possible factors, like biological factors, so transmission from parents to children and grandchildren, so genetic transmission if possible. Environmental effects, so differences between cities and countryside, different parts of the country, effect of food price changes, effect of disappearance of diseases, and we also very much interested in household factors. So what's going on in families? Are little children protected from starvation or not, and what kind of mechanisms are occurring? So maybe small family size will be helpful. One preliminary conclusion is that if a boy grows up with many sisters, or with only sisters, he's doing much better than when he's growing up with only boys. So why is this? In our calculation, we took account of the fact that girls need less calories, little bit less nutrition than boys. So, but we already accounted for this, but still there you see this effect. So the question is then, do we see a discrimination against girls. Is it, if there is one boy or two boys, will they get more food, even more than they need, than the sisters? And the question is, of course, do we find this pattern of discrimination in all social groups or in only in a certain period? But we do see this effect. We now only have measurements at age 19 or age 20, but boys were still growing at this in the 19th century. So now, if you are this age, you know you have already reached your lifetime height. But in 19th century, people kept growing until maybe 23, 24, 25. So the question is, when does this change? When does this final height, when was it actually reached? Is it changing over time? This is something we also want to find out. So in the first experiments I did was to link the 19th century military records to other records of age 25. So we have a second medical examination. So we found actually very large catch-up growth. So after age 19, on average, people would grow 5 centimeters more, which is quite long. And boys who were rejected because they were too small, they actually grew 12 centimeters. So this is, of course, very important if we want to understand what does height actually mean if what we see at age 19 is not the adult height. So this is again part of our research, how this changes over time. Do we see less of this catch-up growth later on and so on? Will be to study more closely at the municipal level, so the level of the community. So how important is the community in and also disease environments and socioeconomic trends. So this is a community study, contextual study. Then we will be looking at intergenerational effects and this catch-up growth. And another part of our project is looking at the later life outcomes. So how many children did it differ by height? Does boys from a given height have more or less success on labor market, for instance, because they are stronger? Or in the marriage market, because girls like to marry someone who is taller? Maybe that's not the case in the Netherlands in 1860, we don't know, but we will find out. So the Dutch grew from 18th century to now about 20 centimeters on average, which is very tall, very low. But we want to, in the end, we want to break this down. So how many of this percentage was caused by a decline of diseases, so the decline of infectious diseases, like smallpox, for instance. How much of it was due to higher food production and better access to food, to higher real wages? How much of it was caused by smaller families, so fewer resource dilution? This is, of course, what we want to explain in the end. And then, of course, we hope that we have some guidance, some advice for poor countries. So you'd better invest, for instance, in poor relief or in education, because sanitation may be important, or you better invest in food production, because this protein is very important. So this is maybe the end result after another 3 years that we can hope to achieve.